On April 2nd, 1988, Ivan McQuire participated in a skydiving venture above the Franklin County Sports Parachute Center in North Carolina. Ivan lived in Durham, North Carolina, and was working his everyday job at the telecommunications company Northern Telecom. On his time off, Ivan would volunteer for the Franklin County Sports Parachute Center. Ivan had an interest in skydiving as he had participated up to 800 jumps in his lifetime, and he was hoping that maybe one day he would become one of the greats. To pursue his dreams, Ivan recorded many of his jumps, and while volunteering at the parachute center, he recorded videos of beginners and newcomers so that they could see how they did. While Ivan was essentially an expert at this, he understood the dangers of any freak accident going on at any moment, and that no matter how skilled you were, something could always go wrong. And then unfortunately, he would face a fatal accident. Ivan typically worked the third shift at Northern Telecom, and so he usually left the center around noon to get to work. On the weekend, he would often stay a little longer since he had the time. And on April 2nd, 1988, it was reported by Nancy Fayard, the wife of the parachute center owner Paul Fayard, that Ivan had stayed until 2:30 that day as he was shooting a video for himself and a couple newcomers. Ivan was described as a perfectionist, and he always tried his best to implement new videography skills to capture better shots. So there was no real concern from others as to why he opted to stay longer than usual. In order to prepare for his last jump and final recording for the day, Ivan was alongside 11 other jumpers, which included Paul Fayard. They all boarded a twin-engine Beech D-18 and took off from the parachute center. Keep in mind, this was going to be Ivan's third jump of the day. On his first one, everything went smoothly, and he was able to garner good footage. The second jump was a bit different as Ivan made the mistake of not putting on his chute, but he was thankfully reminded by one of the other parachutists that he was missing it before he boarded the plane. Now it was time for the third jump, and as per usual, Ivan was getting his camera gear all ready for recording. He once again forgot to acquire his chute, but this time, no one noticed. Ivan would record all of his footage using a video camera on his helmet. When he was given the go to jump, he jumped first, and was quickly followed by two others.
The KNBC building was a veteran skydiver. His helmet was outfitted with a special camera. After performing a jump with an unstudent and a t-shirt, and farther reach, the man realized he had no parachute. And these are the last images he will ever film before coming to his death.
After jumping, Ivan reached down to his right hip to pull his ripcord, but after realizing that he had forgotten to put on his chute, he fell into a state of panic as he ended up in a free fall. With absolutely no way to save himself, Ivan crashed down 10,500 feet at approximately 150 miles per hour. He was instantly killed upon hitting the ground. His body was found in a nearby wooded area just 1.5 miles from the parachute center. Just the next day, a full investigation was in process, and everyone who was with Ivan that day was taken into question. One of the first concerns surrounding Ivan was his well-being. Those around him were asked whether or not he had been suffering from any suicidal tendencies, or if he was intoxicated during the jump. This was brought into question because he made the same mistake twice by not remembering his chute, and it was assumed that it was an act of. But these questions were answered, as many loved ones explained that Ivan showed no symptoms of. And regarding if he was intoxicated, his blood samples appeared normal. With that being said, two other reasons were brought up to explain his cause of death. One of them was explained by Nancy, as she stated that he was working longer hours than usual on that day, which meant that he was already in a tired state, and that he's a real perfectionist when it comes to video photography, and that he'd been working a lot on it. With this in mind, she came up with the conclusion that he was so focused on his work, plus his exhaustion, it led to him completely forgetting about his chute. Another suggestion that seems to be more favored was noted by Walter Rigsby, an inspector for the Federal Aviation Administration. He explained that the harness Ivan wore for his video equipment is similar to that of the parachute equipment, meaning that he must have assumed that he was already wearing it, as it had the same feel. Once this was established, another person was heavily questioned. The plane's pilot, Mark Lumen, reportedly never did a proper inspection of everyone's safety. For the first couple days after the incident, Mark Lumen couldn't be found for questioning and had no telephone listening. Franklin County Sheriff's Captain Ralph Brown, explained that Mark wasn't in any position to see what happened in the back of the plane. But after getting into contact with Mark Luman, just shortly after, he explained that no one at the parachute center knew that he entered the plane without a chute. Walter Rigsby heavily criticized him and stated that Mark had failed to follow Regulation 105, which states that no one may jump unless the pilot checks the parachutes. For his lack of care, Mark Luman had his pilot license suspended for 30 days by the FAA in September of 1988. The only available clip of Ivan's death is a spiced 38-second clip of the tragedy, and due to his camera being wrecked upon impact, the full footage will never be recovered. On August 19, 1987, during the 4 p.m. edition of KNBC's Channel 4 News, a man named Gary Stolman entered NBC's Burbank studios as the guest of an employee and took reporter David Horowitz hostage live on air. Gary Stolman is the son of former employee Max Stolman, who has talked about his son and mental health while on air. This included conversations about how Gary has been sent to numerous mental hospitals from his delusions. Max Stolman was also a pharmacist, and he often gave advice on drugs and their effects. During the hostage, Gary walked up to David Horowitz and pressed his gun towards him, while the two others on set, anchorwoman Kirsty Wilde and anchorman John Beard, watched this all happen. Gary then gave him a note and explained that he wanted him to read it out for everyone to hear. Due to the serious situation, David agreed without hesitation and started to read his note. For those watching at home, they only witnessed the first 28 seconds as the broadcast was shortly cut to a technical difficulty screen. This is the only available public footage of the incident.
Because, you know, one of the nicest things about shopping by mail order... Pardon me? What is this? Let me see what it says. All right. All right, well, let me read this. Folks, we have someone on the set who's standing here and would like me to read this copy which was just handed to me. You want to tell me your name or not? What is it? And Gary, where are you from?
David, very cool there. At that point, news producer Nancy Valenta ordered us off the air, but we all pretended that we were still broadcasting for the entire rambling, incoherent statement, and this is how it ended off the air. Viewers did not see this.
Involved. There is no way I can harm anyone with this empty BB gun.
As it turned out, Gary wrote a manifesto about how he believes his father was replaced by a clone by the CIA and aliens. While it was originally believed to be only a short segment, David Horowitz would go on to read the full manifesto for 7 minutes. However, for obvious reasons, the full footage has never been publicly released and will likely never leave NBC's archives. After the reading, Gary put down his gun and it was taken away by John Beard. Shockingly, Gary thanked David for obeying his orders and stated that he couldn't have harmed anyone with his unloaded BB gun. It was later determined that the weapon was a plastic replica of a .44 caliber pistol that would fire small plastic pellets. Shortly after, the police came to arrest him. He was later dismissed on 2 charges, but was put on a 3-year promotion and was sent to an undisclosed mental facility to which he is still held to this day. As for how Gary got into the studio, it was explained by Kirsty Wilde that she was called a couple days prior to the incident by Gary himself, claiming that he never had the chance to visit the station when his father worked there, and that he wished to spend some time there. Due to Kirsty not seeing anything wrong and to his overall connection, Gary was allowed to freely walk without being questioned, and wasn't even searched by security. While trying to find out more about Gary Stolman, I found a blog post posted by him on February 18, 2014, where he talks about his perspective of the entire situation and how he truly believes that his family and father were replaced by clones by the CIA. I will be honest, there's a ton to read, but from what I understand, Gary claimed to have started receiving strange phone calls from his family members. His first recount of this was when his mom called him back in the summer of 1981. While staying in his new college apartment in Florida, he was awaiting a shipment of belongings from his parents back home in California. Almost immediately after, his mom would call him and ask if he ever received the shipment, and his mom said that she would check up on it, and immediately after saying that, the phone line went dead. He later explained that his mother seemed to be fearful and worried that he didn't receive it, and this caused him to worry. Gary went on to later explain that ever since the call, he would receive obscure calls out of the blue from his family members and even his phone operator. The operator questioned him about people he didn't even know. From his perspective, he started to believe that his phone was tapped and that he was being monitored by the phone company or someone who wanted to know more about him. As we scroll further down the blog, he mentioned even more strange behavior from students in his classroom to even his girlfriend. I'm gonna be honest, there are a bunch of different posts, and they all seem to stem back to his first strange phone call with his mother back in the summer of 1981. His statements later become much more extreme as he goes over his experience throughout the numerous mental facilities he has attended, and this is when people started to really question what he was saying. I'll leave a link of the entire blog post for you guys if you wish to look more into it. However, I'm gonna warn you guys, it's a lot to read. This image of a volleyball game that seems to be recorded through an old school VHS camera has been talked about hundreds of times due to it having a potentially disturbing backstory, but despite the many conversations surrounding it, there's still no confirmed answer about its origins. In July 2017, an anonymous user posted a thread on 4chan's paranormal board about an alleged disturbing case. In 2006, at a high school in either Nebraska or South Dakota, a hitman was hired by government officials to shoot someone at a high school volleyball game, but things ended up horribly, which resulted in around 17 to 24 people getting killed in a crossfire. Due to the shooting becoming widespread and receiving news footage from around the world, the government decided to cover it up by not releasing any media footage about it and paying the families affected to keep quiet about it. The legitimacy behind this event is pretty low due to how the only pieces of evidence that talk about the story are from 4chan and Reddit posts. Adding on, it would be difficult to hide this shooting because if it did occur, that would mean that this incident would be the deadliest school shooting massacre of all time. And let's just say hiding that wouldn't be an easy task. One of the most common answers regarding this event is many people believing this is some sort of a Mandela effect. It's believed that people are mistaking the 2006 volleyball incident with another crisis that occurred known as the 2006 Platte Canyon High School hostage. On September 27, 2006, a hostage and shooting took place at Platte Canyon High School in Bailey, Colorado. The gunman, who was 53-year-old Dwayne Morrison, took 7 female students hostage and sexually assaulted them. When confronted by authorities in one of the classrooms, Dwayne opened fire with a semi-automatic pistol before shooting one of the hostages, Emily Keys, in the head. Shortly after, Dwayne Morrison would shoot himself, which allowed the victims to be released unharmed. Now, comparing them both, there are a couple different series of events that are different than the 2006 volleyball incident. Begin with, the crisis that happened in Platte Canyon High School had nothing to do with a volleyball game, as Dwayne only initiated his attack inside classrooms. Also, only one student died in this incident compared to the 17 and 24 deaths that supposedly happened during the volleyball game. Coincidentally, the original image from the volleyball game lines up perfectly date-wise with the Platte Canyon High School crisis, which just makes the idea of this being a possible Mandela effect much more believable. With many considering that the whole incident was just one big hoax, it still has led many to question where the image even came from. A post was submitted on r/Internet Mysteries, which has created conversation and potentially new discoveries surrounding the image. Regarding the incident itself, this image isn't the only one associated with it. 5 other images that were posted on an anonymous forum show a group of photos that apparently were taken that same day of the incident. There have been a ton of suggestions about where these photos have come from, such as being from a scene in an old horror film, the photos just being photoshopped, someone just shooting footage of their gym using an old school VHS camcorder, or the images may just be AI generated. These 3 pictures convince many that it must have been edited or taken from an obscure film project, as the blood splatter on the ground looks extremely fake, and what depicts students bleeding out looks heavily skewed and edited as well. However, this image in particular was originally believed to be a piece of evidence that the volleyball incident could have been real, as many pointed out that it shows a bunch of body bags covering the victims. But this was quickly discredited, as body bags aren't often red, and that the objects on the ground look more like deflated gym equipment. So that suggestion was pretty much thrown out the way. This final image is what created possibly the most concerning, as towards the bottom of it, it has the message CBI not for release. CBI was later possibly identified to stand for Colorado Bureau of Investigation, which was then theorized to be a piece of footage from the incident that day, but no further evidence has been provided. Just when I thought that this would be all for this topic, I saw this comment posted a couple times on the Reddit thread. This user explains that they found the origin for this image, as it was taken at Utica's high school gym in Ohio. They explained that the gym has the same floor design, and that it was possibly taken from one of their volleyball games. The link provided shows a broadcast of one of the games, and looking at the floor, I would say that they do look quite similar. No further information has been given, but one thing that comes to my mind is, how do we even know that all these images are connected? The photos were sent from 2 different people and seem to be the only known images of the supposed incident. As many have suggested, this is likely from an old film project that was created by someone for either a school project or just to experiment with. The intention behind it and where it has taken has yet to be discovered, but I'm happy to have a discussion on what you guys think about this image. Feel free to let me know in the comments.